Better
Hello.
popping over than popping off. Hi.
Awesome.
Hi.
How's my volume? I just really need to check this super quickly because I just checked and for some reason it was like had adjusted itself to like 50%.
You're good on our end.
I can take it up or down.
You can get another 10%, and I would be excited. I'd be happy
and
about
while I'm
that.
doing that, do you want to? Where should I find the things for their sponsors?
It's in the production team meeting, but you know what? I'll start us off. So, folks, we're going to be starting this panel in just a sec, but I just have to say thank you so much to our sponsor, Bookworm Games, for providing all the sponsorship love that they do. If you want to support them back and get yourself some amazing dice, you can get all sorts of dice at bookwormgames.com, and if you use code DorkTales, you'll save 10% on everything from resin dice to wood dice to gemstone dice, including World of Darkness themed Gemstone D10 sets. Would you like a Mage the Ascension set made out of amethyst? Would you like a Sabbat theme set made out of bloodstone? There are tons more options there waiting for you. And you can also find out about their system agnostic game in a boxes called Quest Chest. Go to questchest.info, not chestquest.info. That's a different site that we'll talk about later. So thank you so much to Bookworm Games for sponsoring us. And with that, let's get consensual. Consensual. I'm gonna shut off my mic now. Bye.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're getting consensual.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. So I've been tapped in as a moderator for this panel, which I found out about like 2 seconds ago. So this is gonna be great. I'm really excited. I haven't moderated any panels yet this weekend, even though I talk a lot in many panels. So yeah, hi, I am Amy, she, her, they, them, Paradoxical Ghoul in the chat and on Discord and most social media. I am in many things and on the channel, and sometimes I even stream on my own channel at twitch.tv/Paradoxical Ghoul, and I'm excited to talk about loves, snacks, and consent. Yeah.
Snacks?
Yeah.
Party snacks.
Oh, sorry. Love, sex, and consent in our tabletop RPGs. Yeah. So, I'm excited for it. So let's do some other introductions, and I guess let's do Millie. Take it away.
Sure. Hey, hi, all of you. My name is Millie, or Bunny Hearted. My pronouns are she and her, or they and them. I'm like a 90s anime styled retro dork ass bunny girl comfort VTuber. And I do my thing over at twitch.tv/bunnyhearted. And all my socials are bunnyhearted.com. If you want to find me in any other secret bunny locations. But other than that, I'm a proud member of the Dork Tales team and community. I really love the space, and I'm really excited to be here talking about love, sex, and consent. Also, I'm chronically ill and I've had a really rough flare-up all weekend, but it might have just stopped like literally an hour ago. I have so much energy, and I'm currently eating like the biggest pile of fried rice I've ever seen in my life, and it's amazing. So
Yeah.
I might be unstoppably powerful this panel. We'll see.
So you do have your snacks.
You're
Got
too
it.
dangerous now.
Oh yes. I probably have like, I don't know, 4,000 calories in snacks. like bring it on.
Beautiful. All right. Cal.
Hello, my name is Cal. I use he, him pronouns. In the chat, I'm Neo Cal, like from the Matrix. Most places, that's where I am. Yeah, part of Dork Tales team, possibly the newest member. But I've been adjacent, guest starred for a few years. And yeah, I know almost everybody here. And it's gonna be fun talking about the love, snacks, and consent panel.
And sex.
Oh, and that, yeah. The snacks come first, or sometimes not at all.
True. Kel.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I guess it's afternoon now. It's somewhere. I'm Kel from up the road. I use she, her pronouns. I am Kel here in the Twitch chat. I am Kel Bell pretty much everywhere else, except in Discord where I'm Hell Bell because somebody actually took Kel Bell, but it's some variety of that pretty much everywhere. I am Dork Tales team member. I'm your friendly neighborhood criminologist by education, and yeah, this is kind of one of my things that I like to talk about, and it's important, and I love just being part of the Dork Tales panels, sharing whatever I can.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
This.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris. I go by he or they pronouns. I'm calling in today from the traditional territory of the K-Cap peoples in what is known as New West. I have a background in nerd stuff. I am I guess a digital content creator is a word you could use for it. You can find me online at twitch.tv/BoulderNA. I have a not safe for work Twitter, which you can find via links places. So we're not going to give link out into this chat, but what I am going to mention is that I love D&D. I've been playing it for a long time. And way back when, looking back over 6 years ago, I used to play tabletop games out west with a bunch of the Dork Tales crew. So that was fantastic. So I'm going to pass the mic on to Captain Starbun.
Hey everybody, I'm Kat in chat as twitch.tv/Captain Starbun, and I am yet another bunny VTuber who happens to also be trans. I've been a part of the Dork Tales crew for quite some time now. And yeah, I especially like this panel because it goes over a lot of very important things that can also be so much fun in a game and adds so much life to things.
Awesome. So that is other one. I have just dumped a whole bunch of things into the chat here for our own little private chat. And I think just the title of the panel is Love, Sex, and Consent. So maybe we should go over what those are and how we are talking about them and referring to them, because we're tossing a lot of terms around. So
so what is love?
What is love?
Bunny, don't hurt me.
Bunny, don't hurt me?
Oh,
Yeah,
I would never. Not you.
So we play tabletop RPGs. Everyone, a lot of people like to flirt and have romances options in their games. And I guess why do we do that? Why are we wanting that? Usually people think about this in the romantic sense, but as an asexual individual, sometimes that's not all I want. So I would like to make sure that when we're talking about that in this panel, we are keeping in mind all types of love, including platonic and differences between the romantic attractions and sexual attraction and how they differ as we're going through this. Yeah, so love, and then sex, obviously, we're talking about, in this case, maybe not obviously, about the act of the sex itself. We are not talking about biological sex here. I do not think that's what we're touching on. I'm pretty sure we're talking about sex because our characters sometimes want to get freaky, and how we handle that and how we handle that in a way that is safe and comfortable for everybody involved at the table, because you are doing a communal thing at a table. And then consent. Who's consenting to it? Is everybody consenting to it? And why that is so very critical, and the fluidity of consent. So very quick run over. And yeah.
And then also, how consent is determined and what it means and all of those things.
So, yeah, how do we go into that? And of course, chat, please ask questions. We love to see it. We'll go try to respond to as many of them as we can.
Do we want to start kind of, instead of definitions of those things, do we want to back up to boundaries, or should we define those things, all of these things, more before we kind of touch on talking about boundaries?
I mean, I think that's, consent and boundaries, I think, is a really good place to start.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I definitely want to make sure we go through the why we're invested in all of these, but I think it makes sense to start with definitions.
Yeah, and why we're having this panel in the first place too, right?
Yeah.
So why does this even have to be brought up in conversation? I guess people like to have sex and romance and such and in their games. And so yeah, why are we even doing that? So I don't know about you, if anyone wants to just jump in on this, but sometimes you're playing and it's just the story is great, the plot is great, we're having a great time, but sometimes you just want to have that extra little connection for a personal just investment in the story on a character level. And sometimes that can also connect to personal exploration of what am I into, or Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a way that a story can be deepened, right? And I'm now realizing that could be a very dubious joke, but don't worry about that. I just mean like when you're telling a narrative and you're describing the connection between two people. Like I think in like outside of a fictional narrative, that there is very much potential for a connection between two or even more people to end up developing into romance or something physical or all of those things. And those are like cool and good and awesome. And those can be really interesting things to portray in a tabletop game. I think that there's of course, you know, a lot of risk for potential kerfuffles, which is why the rest of this panel is very important. But it can be so much fun, and it can really help to tell what I feel is more like personal or impactful or compelling story for those who feel it's a part of storytelling. There's a reason that the books that you read, the characters smooch in it. They're not just like awkwardly elbow bumping all the time. They're like, all of us are best friends. No, some of them are going to get married. Some of them are going to have relationships with each other. Some of them are going to connect on a different level. And I think it's important to allow your tabletop space, if your peeps are up for that, to explore this stuff safely, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Chris.
I think one thing I could mention is that a lot of the tabletop games that we play, D&D or World of Darkness games, they're all about relationships. There's mechanics to them. There's things that you're doing. And in the story you're telling, you're building relationships and connections between your characters, but also with the other players. So the real D&D is the friendship we made along the way, or the real game is the friendship along the way. But there also potentially could need to be a discussion about how we keep our character and our personal self separated from that and prevent that enmeshing, unless that's something you're open to or comfortable talking about. So it's always great to be able to play a character, but there's an angle of investment that needs to be you need to be aware of while you're playing a game.
And another thing in that kind of line on why it's important to talk about these things, especially beforehand, is sometimes our characters can develop in ways that we don't necessarily expect as players, where, like, I know at least in me, in my case, and I know a lot of others, like, there are times that our characters kind of do their own thing, even though we're the ones controlling them. They may do something necessarily different than what we would do in that situation, or find somebody attractive in one way or another that we necessarily wouldn't. Yeah. And sometimes we don't know what's going to happen until something starts happening.
Oh, very true. Do Kel or Cal want to jump in on that quickly?
Yeah, I find Chris brought up a good point that the whole thing is about relationships. Some games more than others. There's nothing wrong if you like your beer and pretzels. I kind of just want to move my miniature around and like axe goblins. Yeah. But like, you know, you're supposed to be buddies with all the players in the very least, right? And the whole consent thing, this in particular, like love and sex, but consent is kind of, which is why we'll probably need to go into like session briefly, the consent part of session zeros. Like we'll talk about tools in a bit to do that, but like PvP, you're affecting relationships and friendships and love, right? And that's why these consent forms and what we want from the game and that kind of thing is important. And I think trying to tell the story you want to tell while respecting the players with the greatest of boundaries is the goal there, because 4 out of 5 players might be okay with X, Y, and Z, and one of the players doesn't want X or Y in their game. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, do you guys still want to play if, you know, there's none of this or like this? And ultimately, yeah, that's what it comes down to, is like finding out the group, consenting to the group boundaries and like what they want from it, right? Like some people don't want like NPCs or other characters to hug them, Doesn't mean they don't want to be their friends.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's all kind of, it kind of feels inclusive.
Yeah, Chris, what up?
Yeah, and if the entire table wants to play Fatal or something, they can do that. That is their choice, and that's a really graphic, really, I'll say graphic and very visceral system. But I know that's not the kind of evening I want to have. That's not the kind of time I want to spend with my friends necessarily. So yeah, it's and choosing the right environment and ensuring that you can do this in a place that respects your personality as well.
Yeah, so given all that, and that this is about relationships and that people may have different ideas about what they want to get out of the story, how do we do this safely? How do we navigate that? And I think that is something that needs to be very discussed. Like, how do we actually establish that consent, and what does that mean for
very open communication? Absolutely, just be open, be willing to talk with your co-players, your DM, be understanding of your own communication style. That also comes into it, because it's not just about the relationships your characters are having, it's the relationships you have with the other players around your table. And understanding how your relationships work is going to help inform you as to how you can portray your character relationships better. So, but definitely communication is the key.
Yeah, and a lot of that we'll talk about more about session zeros in a panel coming up later, but like the session zero and the use of those consent forms. And actually, I'll just quickly drop the Tabletop Titties consent form, because that one's been getting a lot of circulation. It is in the Twitch chat here. Like, whether or not you actually even want to have romance or sex be a possibility in your story, in your game. Like, that's something that the table has to agree to and needs to be brought up in advance in your session zero, because that could be a deal breaker. And yeah, like, and as consent being fluid, it may come up later and be like, oh, I thought this, I wanted this, but actually I don't, and I'm not comfortable with this. And you have, and being able to put a pin in it and move on is...
You can change your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I put that consent form in like 6 months ago, and I said I was okay with this, but oh geez, it's no, that's not how it works.
That's where we're having specific safety tools that you've agreed on or you talk through in session zero can be really, really beneficial, because I mean, like, I do want to step back a tiny bit and offer a definition for consent, because I want to make sure that we have a solid thing to talk through and to invite y'all to add to it. But personally, I mean, this is where I have my dork-ass professional experience. So it's going to sound very dorky, academic-y, soundbitey, but I would define consent as, an ongoing, enthusiastic yes between equals. So ongoing means that it has to be checked in on regularly. It could change. Enthusiastic means you're not guilting them into it. There's no coercion. There's not a feeling that they have to go along with something. They have to be like actively stoked on it. A yes means an actual yes, not just an absence of a no. And then equals means that you're taking into account any sort of power dynamics or any of those sort of circumstances in the situation. So in tabletop, that might look like someone who's like, yeah, I'm cool with romancing players, but not the DM. Who knows? There's tons of different ways that power could come into play in it. You just want to make sure that all of those things, and that any other additions to consent other folks want to add to this, are taken into consideration when you are generating and trying to figure out your consent forms or structures or any of that sort of stuff with your players. Does that sound like an okay starting point? Is there more stuff to say about the definitions of consent?
I think it's a great starting point, but it's like anything else that we can build on that. And the way we build on it in our sessions might look different from how you build on it in your sessions. It's that great, like initial seed where the rest of the plant just grows, and it's going to be, it sounds kind of silly, maybe not, but it just kind of grows, naturally. It's just going to happen. It's just going to evolve the way that it's going to happen for your group. So your group's going to look different from ours, and that's okay.
And on, oh, sorry.
So Amy just said what I think is a really important addendum to what we were talking about in our secret chat here. Do you want to say
Yeah,
anything?
absolutely. Yeah. So this is just something that it's been said before. I don't know if it's been said recently this weekend, but it's something that I think is always so very important is that like the consent of the players, so very critical. But the DM and the storyteller, is also a player. Their consent is equally as important. If you're going into a game and everyone else is down for a romance or for, I don't know, full PvP and possibly inter-party conflict that is very negative and potentially toxic, if they're all down for that, but the storyteller is not, that needs to be respected and that needs to be established as a boundary. And yeah. So I think some DMs forget that they are just as important. They are just as involved in the story as the players. It's for everybody, not just the players.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I think for like most of my 20s, it was all like trying to make my game and the story and the theme and how much action there is and whether love is okay and like that kind of thing about like what the players want. I only started really running really good games when I started trying to tell the stories I wanted. And then talking with the characters and being like, hey, this is the thing I want to do. Does this interest you? And then let's go on from there. So yeah, starting, not including the DM, but like they're not just there for you to have like a dancing monkey, right? So I appreciate bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. Bunny, did you have something you want to say?
No, not off the top of my head. I just know that there were a couple of folks who I think had something to say. We were talking in a secret chat that we're hoping the service had like a hand raise system.
Yeah.
Some of us don't have hand tracking. I mean, I can do this, but I don't know. My hand does things sometimes.
I can't, but I can do this.
Yeah, do
sure,
wiggle angrily.
Yeah, that's
I'll just understand that the angry wiggle means the cat wants to take
talk.
One thing that I wanted to bring up just as well is the how much of a part trust also plays in consent, in that you can have all the consent forms and discussion you want about a subject, but if you don't know that you can trust that person that you're with, or they can't trust you if you're doing something, that if you say that you're uncomfortable and that you would like to stop, that it will actually stop, without question or but it's just like, you know what, okay, yeah, this is the end of this scene or discussion or whatever it is. Just the idea of having the trust there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there's something that Kelly, I think it was yesterday he said it. I don't remember when he said it, but I was listening to one of the panels pretty good, and I thought, and it was a really good point, it was that if one person has withdrawn, like is not comfortable with the scene, it ends there. It just, one person withdraws consent, it is withdrawn. Like, you don't keep going, even if everybody is else is interested. It's done. There's no is, and he's just dropped this in our chat here, and I love how he said this. No is a complete sentence. That is, it is no, and that is the end of that. You don't have, there's no justification. Like, I don't remember who was saying it before, but I will say it again, is that even if you think, I think it might have been Bunny, actually, Bunny heard it, that even if you think that you're being helpful by asking for an explanation, you are not. You are not helping. It could actually be much worse. Very much paraphrased, but
it may be none of your damn business. and you got to respect that. And it's not enough for the person who's saying no to understand and trust in their gut that no is a complete sentence. And that goes for any situation. Do you want to go out towards this party tonight? No. Okay, fine, great. But it works so well. And if it's not anybody's business, if they want you to know why, they'll tell you why. If they don't want to, don't push it. You don't know what anybody's experience is.
Yeah. I think, Chris, you had something to say?
Yeah, just briefly, coming from different communities and different work groups I've been part of, in medical consent, one important thing is that you're not expanding yourself beyond your scope of practice or what you're trained to do. So if one thing I see people do is try and use D&D as therapy, and I do agree that there are things that can be done in D&D that are therapeutic, or sorry, that act as a therapy tool, but having that has to be done with the explicit knowledge and consent of everyone that's a part of it. That's part of the consent process. So beyond simply like love and sex, expanding consent, because consent is a huge topic, we need to make sure that we're doing things that we're trained to do and everyone wants to do. I mean, yeah, don't know if I expressed that clearly, but also if you are willing to share different things, there's in the kink community, there's a saying called risk. Sorry, I just looked risk aware and consensual. So if you are wanting to try something and you are trying to expand out of the space that you're familiar with, you're understanding that maybe you might press a button or maybe you might go somewhere a little further than you're comfortable with, and then being willing to stop right then, being like, okay, yep, that was too much. That's out of line. My D&D is often very much the beer and pretzels with your friends, Cal. So this is a very different experience from necessarily something really dark.
I don't believe you.
And then I see that Kat, you have something you want to say.
Actually, Chris just covered it exactly.
Oh,
all right. Yeah. Okay. Kel, I see your hands up.
I wanted to build on what Chris was talking about in not going past your own capabilities. That is absolutely so important. And I've seen so many different questions in forums about like, oh, well, we're going to use D&D and explore this. And, my friends, we're hoping that we can have these great psychological breakthroughs. It's like, are you a therapist? Are you trained to do this? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Because it could seriously, seriously harm somebody psychologically. And the last thing that any of us want to do in any of our games is traumatize anyone or bring up a past trauma that you're not capable of dealing with. And part of that, I think, is if there is something that could be triggering, understand that, you might have to be able to provide resources for somebody. Don't open the box that you can't close. So if you aren't able to fix it, don't break it.
Yeah. So I have a degree in psychology, but I am not a trained clinical psychologist. That is not my field. But I had to take like clinical psychology as a course, and something that my professor very much like drilled into our brains was unless you are trained to do a specific type of therapy, this is your like something you know how to do, or even just assessment tools, like how to do the assessment and like accurately figure out the results and understand what that means and interpret them, you do not do it. That is considered like malpractice and very, very bad. Do not do it.
Absolutely.
So while it's one thing to explore things out of your wheelhouse with your friends to try and be supportive to each other, unless you are a trained therapist who is using this as a therapy tool as part of your kit of tools, you need to be aware of that. And yeah.
Well, speaking of tools,
there's a lot of those.
Which one of us?
So sometimes there are tools available to make this easier, including if you're playing in person. I don't know who does that anymore, but like actual, like literal, like red, green, and yellow, like cards, or sometimes, and sometimes, or in like a private, like little chat, like our ping chat or whatever is going on, or if you're okay publicly just saying no, but it just means, oh, we don't need to talk, we don't need to address it, right? Like red light, green light. It just means, and you don't need to know either. Like actually, like all of you were saying, I don't need you to stop it and go, okay, explain to me, is it like the expansion porn that you have a problem with, or is it the spiders? No, it's just, here's my red card, and oh, that's too much here. Come, that's my red card, and like I don't want that.
I'm delighted to hear about this concept for a tabletop game, which includes both spiders and expansion porn.
I am
can't
also
believe you've
here
done
for
this.
Are we separating expansion and inflation? Those different things.
Oh,
I'm not a doctor.
inflation
Two
is
different
like our
concepts.
dollar's terrible right now.
That's okay, fair. We don't want to bring. I don't want to
card.
talk about the
No.
economy.
Yeah.
Nobody
That's
consents
a
to the
whole other
economy.
panel. I do not consent to talking about the economy. That's my red flag.
So how we do it here, because we do it remotely, especially in some of our games like our Mage of the Ascension Victorian Age game, we touch on things that can get quite dark, especially with the time period, and that all the players have consented to various things. But at the same time, that consent isn't like no holds barred. It is like we have a conversation with the storyteller in advance. We are given, it's like, we may cover this topic. Are you okay with this happening to your character? And then knowing the limits and knowing when the scene will fade to black, or knowing that this scenario may happen to your character if you're okay with, if you've consented to it, but with the understanding that you know it's going to resolve in a way that you will come out on top. It would like, and that you can X out anytime. So in our chat, like Kelly will sometimes say, and like before we start the game, this may be particularly dark. And we will get a warning. The audience gets a warning so that the audience can know that they can, again, for the audience, because we are doing shows, that they can step away at any time for their own safety and well-being, and maybe that this is not the episode for them. So that is very important, and that's why content warnings are so useful too. So they can. So in our chat, we just have to do like, I think it's like individual lines, like I think it's like 3 X's, and then we know, because we're always monitoring the chat, that is our X card ended. We're done. The scene is over. And because sometimes we aren't always the storyteller's not always the one first to know, there's someone can be like sort of the ombuds person who can just say, hey, check the chat. It hasn't been noticed in like a couple seconds. And that is not the person who has put in the X. Or maybe it is, but it's just like, that's the person for this game. And so it's not putting people on the spot in the audience. Yeah. So, Kat, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, you mentioned a phenomenal thing in that called Fade to Black, of course, which is a phenomenal resource that can make a scene still really come alive, that somebody may not be willing to role play, but they could be happy to initiate the scene and then just have imagination take over without actually having to verbalize or act any of it out. So the Fade to Black can be such a powerful resource for just helping scenes along and helping people be more comfortable with various things, because you can fade to black literally at any time, like we were just, like Amy was just saying.
And then I see that Cal, you've got your hand up.
That brings up a really good point. Just because you're okay with something happening in the story doesn't mean like, okay, now can we spend 15 minutes like talking about how I escape after I've been tied up by like pirates or whatever. And no, it's just like, hey, can we like yada yada? I don't like the X or Y. Yeah. And that's something I never thought about. Like, just because you're okay happening it in the story doesn't mean you have to illustrate it. Yeah. And the fade to black is cinematic too, because it is like a movie where it'll fade and then there's an assumed event that happens. I like that.
Like the example of like 2 people like sitting on a couch in front of a fire kissing, and then like it pans away to the fireplace or something, and you're like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Captain Starbun. I hadn't even considered that fading to black wasn't an option. Thank you for explicitly stating that, because every time I've been in a game where with a situation where someone's like, "Oh yeah, these two characters or these character and this NPC hook up," it wasn't at all explicit, and now I just have the mental image of people sitting around a table and describing the intimate details of how it happens, and like I'm sure it happens, and like at worst we've like rolled to see how well it goes, but I can't. That would make me personally very uncomfortable, and like I'd be like, this is kind of a weird thing to do, like, and it might not be at all tables, but it would just be a real
Kind of
intense
weird.
moment. Oh yeah, that's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're doing this, hey, okay, like you, me, and our like 4 best buds.
I mean, if that is what that table wants and everyone's on board for it, go wild.
Yeah,
do whatever you want. Fine.
Fill your boots.
We're all
Like-
just bros here.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
But as long as everyone's on board with it, right? Like,
exactly. And
but know that for yourself, right?
I'm really grateful we're having this conversation. Someone in our chat was mentioning that they had previously had unpleasant experiences at a gaming table, and I've been there too. It was like it's awful, and the fact that this is like a common behavior, and more on session zeros are coming up, but like that discussion about what you want, I'm so happy that it's happening, like in more tables. So as D&D is having this renaissance, or gaming is having its renaissance, like people are having a better time of starting out than perhaps when I did 23 years ago. Like hopefully things have gotten a little bit better.
How many of us have like been in a game where we're like, haha, I guess this is D&D, and like the DM like has a succubus and goes into detail about like things that they do with that succubus, or like just puts weird stuff in their game, and the players are like, well, this is my first D&D game and I'm 17, so what do I know?
Oh.
Thankfully not. No, thankfully
Oh,
I've not been in
sweet
anything
summer
like
child.
that.
I've heard horror stories,
Yeah.
but no, thankfully I've not. Kel, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, it was still on the fade to black part, because again, you might not be comfortable saying it out loud. If you're if your character is having an event or a scene with an NPC, are you comfortable having that basically the relationship with your storyteller? Our cyberpunk game, my character had a connection and a sort of relationship with one of the NPCs, and we were very open about it. And Kelly just said, yeah, how do you want to handle this, go through it or fade to black? I'm like, fade to black, like I don't need to do this. But besides, my partner was in the game with me. It's just like, yeah, honey, do you wanna watch this all happen? And I'm sure he would have said no. So it's like, yeah, let's just skip that whole thing.
I want to
Fade to Black works
piggyback.
great because it's the power of imagination is always better than what actually happened anyway.
Yeah.
It is.
Or is that sorry, that was my relationships in the past? I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. Go
I
for
just
it.
wanted to really quick like throw in there. Oh boy, like maybe you're okay flirting or having like a relationship and everything fades to black. There's nothing explicit. And then like a year into the game, your partner's like, whoa, like, why are you flirting in this? Like, I thought this was a game. I thought you guys like killed goblins and orcs. Anyone else run into that? And you're like, what do you mean your character's married and has a kid? And you're like, but no, I don't actually like love them, and I don't actually have a kid with them. Oop. So consent is about the people in like your lives boundaries about what they consider like emotional, like love. It's love, sex, and maybe people are like, oh, I don't care if you're like orcas boinking people, but like, oh, you've got like a relationship and you say that you love another like character, like and I just want, before it popped out of my ADHD brain, I just wanted to throw that into the void for the rest of you here.
I mean, that's connected to something that I was thinking about and I want to talk about in a moment, which is bleed over and how that can impact your life, and how some of the stuff that happens in games can end up having an impact, and the things and tools, and talk about some tools to help combat that or handle it, because sometimes if you are in a or a LARP, especially because you're doing much more physical, even if it's a no touch, like no contact LARP, there are certain parts of it, if you're going through certain actions and saying certain words with another person, even if you're both in character, that can impact the relationship outside of game. And that's something I think that people very much need to be aware of. Does anyone want to jump in on this one?
I've been lucky. I haven't been in a lot of LARPs. I've been in, well, with you, with Chris, with Millie, and with Kat, and with my partner Michael, who's our graphic designer and is here on Dork Tales. But I mean, the times when we have been in the same LARP, we actually did play a couple, because I was still new to that, I think, and it was easier. It was more comfortable, and happily it worked out. We ended up with a couple of really great characters who still live in our house. I don't understand, but they do.
I know exactly who you're talking
So we were very lucky in that instance, but absolutely I could see it happening. I mean, we hear about it all the time in movies. You know, two people are the co-stars in a movie, and then, oh look, they're in a relationship in real life, and their real lives have fallen into disrepair. So yeah, absolutely need to be careful. And again, communication. Always communication.
Chris, yeah, I saw your hand going up there.
It can also work the other way with your LARP or gaming enemies. It's like, why does this feel weird? Like, are we actually, no, it's just this weird gaming bleed over. And I think like our group used to go out for dinner after, or go out for coffee after, and go have like a little time and mostly it was a chat for us to do the nerd thing and talk about your D&D game in depth, or your World of Darkness game in depth. But it also gave us a chance to be like, oh, hey, so this thing happened. How do we feel about that? Are you cool with that? Like, checking in with each other and really keeping that open line of communication open is clutch. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Millie.
So I think, yeah, Chris, you are 200% on point with this, because I think there's something really, really important in that little check-in, the meetup afterwards. Because bleed, I guess, just to offer a definition, it's like when you're sort of feeling the emotions your character is feeling, right? Like, it's not necessarily bad. Like, it can be good for immersion. It might even be something that you're seeking, depending on the circumstance and that sort of thing. But I think having those moments where you're out of character with those people, and you're debriefing, and you're not only ever interacting with this person in this character context, is so important. And especially for tabletop gaming, it can be really common to be like, all right, that's it, wrapping it up, everyone go home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, we got to work in the morning. Ensuring that you do take that moment to like be your authentic selves with each other, and even detect, like, check in on how stuff went in that game and how you're feeling about it, and all of that stuff can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, and so also there's not just having the emotions from the character in the scene, but also bleed I think can go the other way. If you've had a really awful day at work, or for example, or something has happened in your life that is just, you're really angry or you're really sad, and that may be something that, like, and you bring that into game. Sometimes that
Elisa tipped
can
$50, less than 3.
Things are going to go. Like, it might, I think there's a lot of, I think, self-awareness that comes into that, knowing the line between, oh, I'm very angry, am I taking this out on other people? Which is a pitfall that can happen. And, oh, okay, but my friends have not consented to being my stress relief. Okay, maybe this is not the place to do that. And I just want to make sure that people are aware that can go both ways. Or if you really don't, for example, if you really don't like, maybe you're not the biggest fan of someone, or they've done something that bothers you, maybe don't interact with that person in that game necessarily. It's a little complicated to handle sometimes, and I think there's a lot of thinking and talking and just open communication, right? Yeah. Chris.
I think one thing we can, I've established a personal rule, is that I don't game with people I don't like anymore, which is like, it sounds like a terrible thing to say, but like truly, there's a lot of the time we spend a lot of time with these people around a table or at a LARP setting, and I don't want to spend like 5 hours with someone that I don't get along with or is a little bit repugnant. Let's go with that. Someone I can't have a conversation with. And again, it's all down to the communication. But if there's someone that I'm showing up and I'm not showing up in a good way to have that conversation or have that game, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to subject everyone else at the table to that as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so like at least coming out of a game and dealing with bleed, like we've talked about having like checking in and afters, and just I was thinking like, because sometimes you might go into a situation and and you're like, oh, this is actually going to be a lot more of an aggressive scene than I thought it was going to be, or it ends up going a way you don't expect. And so definitely checking in with each other after that to be like, okay, so we're both cool with this, right? Or having a conversation before going into it, knowing like, okay, so there's conflict that's been building up, there's tension here. How are we going to navigate this? And just knowing that you can have that conversation in advance and steer it. It doesn't have to all be a complete surprise. It may still be a complete surprise how it unfolds, but at least then you can be prepared and lean into it. And that's also like, if you know that a game is going to be particularly dark, getting that warning from your storyteller and having that trust and those lines of communication open, and not being blindsided by it if it's something that maybe is not the most comfortable of topics. Like as we've had happen, like some of the stuff that's come up especially in like vampire, in terms of just some of the thematic themes of vampire games, and with our mage game. And just knowing that, yeah, I can lean into this because I know kind of what's coming. Cal.
I've been waiting in case we wanted to put something, whatever topic we were like behind us. But like you had said, here comes vampire the insert the after it. Vampire the vampire-y. That explicitly deals with fleeting love as you lose your humanity, being a thing that is inherently a predator, and violence, and something that is like close to like sexual violence at times. Those are the themes of vampires. Everyone knows what vampires are, right? And it borders on a lot of that. And so when you go into that game, it can be very easy. Oh, everyone knows what vampires are, right? But, well, like, hold on. I think maybe that kind of game, more than any other, really needs hey, first storyteller, what kind of things do you want in the game? And something like that that needs a lot more fleshing out, because like people change into like animals and attack people. People can mind control in that, right? And in this magical power like vampire game that deals with probably anything that could be a problem, and usually does. Even PvP pops up more in that, right? Because there's often power plays in that game, right? And you're all playing like usually prideful creatures that want to escape final death more than like anything. So in a game that's so loved by like everybody, it is very interesting how different those games can be in different like streams. Even like you might be like, oh, I like Vampire the Masquerade, and randomly find a game like on Twitch, and in like 5 minutes you're like, whoa, no, I don't need to see like graphic or like being described things or having, like there's blood in it. It's like, hey guys, there's blood in this. You guys are playing bloodsuckers. How are you guys with the actual act of sucking blood? And you'd be surprised where people are like, let's just imply that, or let's just, you know, we don't need to like role play every single like aspect out. And how would I'm just rambling now. How would you like listeners or everyone else on the panel too start approaching the mountain that is, hey guys, time to play vampire?
Yeah. And also I just want to just kind of add on to this is that like certain games have themes that can be very uncomfortable and can still be expected, like be explored, but need to be done safely. And that includes games like Changeling the Lost, which has, I'm not the best one to go into that one, but like, yeah.
Problems?
I mean,
problems, yeah.
There is trauma in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trauma. But Bunny,
you're
you
playing
were going.
abused characters in Changeling. Yeah, and I feel like Cal, you really hit something that feels really, really on the spot for me here, because like vampire is a perfect example as someone who actually cannot handle descriptions of sucking blood, or blood being drawn through a needle. This is not something I can handle affecting my character in a game. It's just not going to work for me. So then I feel like I totally still want to play vampire games though, because I think vampire is rad as heck. I want to be a doofus toreador. I want to sit there in a pool of blood and sigh about how beautiful the concept of a sun I'll never see is. Who knows? I just want to do gay ass toreador shit. But like, being able to do so comfortably requires that we've had to check in around those kind of boundaries, and we've talked through what the setting typically includes and entails. And you're right, like everyone kind of knows what a vampire is, but that doesn't mean that everyone knows how a vampire is going to be portrayed in this particular game, or how any of that stuff is going to be handled, right? Like you can fade to black, like we were saying earlier, is so much more than just doing it. Like hunting, you can roll dice to see how your hunt goes, and then just like fade to black on that and be like, cool, you get someone, carry on. Or if that's something that you want to explore and your table wants to explore, oh my gosh, please check in on that stuff before. But also, like, especially when running stuff outside of D&D, but like even with D&D, depending on the module you're running or the game that you're running, like really ensure your players are aware of the themes that they're getting into in each different system. Because some of them, like Changeling, are literally stories about being survivors of abuse. And that is a very important thing to know before you go into that game. And that is probably my favorite World of Darkness game by a mile. And, oh my goodness, please, I would hate to go into that unawares. It's like, so also, by the way, you were abused for like 100 years in an elf kingdom, and you have this keeper who's trying to get you back, and you sort of have like an abusive stalker. Anyways, that's the game. maybe not my favorite without more information. So
yeah, very, very much that is what sometimes I think people get excited about the concept of certain games without thinking through what the themes of those games are. And while sometimes that setting and that system might be perfect for exploring certain themes, they may not be for everybody, and maybe you need to pick something else. And I think that is something to remind people, is that you can pick something else and tell a similar story. It's like, I want to have a whole bunch of, I want vampires, but I want it to be this other thing, and I don't want it to be all this. It's like, yeah, okay, you can do that. You can use a system. You could maybe have vampires and just overlay it in something else. You've got a lot of flexibility and freedom there. That was, especially having those conversations in advance with your table and your consent forms, and knowing like, okay, maybe it's not the story. Maybe you go in with a group and you have a story you want to tell, and it's not the story that ends up being told because that's not what everyone's on board for. Or maybe it's just not the right table for, not the right group to do it. You can.
Sometimes that's how it rolls.
Yeah. Being willing to.
Yeah. And maybe your vampire sucks salt like Star Trek instead of sucks blood. Replace the entire blood dynamic with salt instead.
Yeah.
Just bamboozling a grocery store,
maybe
shopping cart, scooting around aisle 6.
Maybe everybody just carries around like bottles of Gatorade, and that's what the vampires really, really like.
I need my
I don't know.
electrolytes.
Yeah.
It's what your body craves.
Yes.
So I mean, like, there's ways to do, like, it might sound goofy, but you can still do it if you want to. Yeah. I realize I keep thinking about it and being like, oh, I want to talk about the other thing. It's the red light, green light, yellow light, and lines and veils, because that's something that I think gets brought up and talked about, especially talking about session zeros, but I think needs a bit more explanation. So like the lines being, this is like a hard line, do not cross this, do not include this. Like it is just a flat no. It's a no for me across the board. Whereas something like a veil, maybe I don't want to go into it, and maybe it's iffy. And you like maybe need to check in more, but like I'm okay with having it included, but don't be explicit. And I think with veil, like that's the extent of the veil and how closely it can toe, I think is something that is it's very individual for each person and needs to be communicated. But that's where something like the red light, yellow light, green light, we're like, okay, well, red light, similar to the X card, is like, just nope, done, stop. I want it stopping here. Yellow light's like, okay, well, I like where this is going. But maybe we need to slow down, or maybe draw the camera back a bit and maybe not be as focused on it. And green light's like, yeah, no, we're still good. Let's just go. That's that kind of that confirmed we're going forward. That is how my understanding of them though. Yeah.
Oh, and the DM, feel free to pipe in and go, oh, everybody, because sometimes players won't. They'll just like,
the freeze, yeah. Bunny. Wait, no, it was at Boulder. It's Chris. I think you were up next.
This is like I bamboozled myself running a D&D game set in Ravenloft, and there's a setting in Lemuria that is it's like very much the Dishonored setting. And whaling was a big part of it. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, there's a whaling thing. And then my players ask me, like, oh, like, what does that mean? Like, how does that in fact? And then I'm like, I was like talking about whaling, and I made myself super sad. I'm like, I'm kind of done, like, actually. And then it's like, oh yeah, there's wolves outside town. It's like, oh no, there's wolves. And I got real sad about like animal conditions. And I'm like, well, maybe I need to think about this a little more. So we're just gonna move on. We're just skip like, you're in the next town. Cool, we did it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as the storyteller, like sometimes you can just, I mean, you have the power to just shift the scene, and yeah.
What if they were bad whales? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
what if they were the morality of whales?
Are you victim shaming whales now?
I mean, it is Ravenloft, so they probably are. Like realistically, they're probably vampire
stole candy
whales
from kids.
But like,
whales.
Like to the end of like talking about it a little more, I actually like Googled like, oh, like how does whaling work? And then I read it. I'm like, oh, this is like the worst thing I've ever read. There's a Dishonored 2 DLC that like has you invade a whaling facility, and I'm like, oh, I can't play this DLC. Like, ew.
Oh no.
I mean, like, don't do it. Don't look it up.
Don't look it up. Yeah. Yeah, Bunny, you just said something in our private chat. Do you want to just mention that, just to, because you're kind of expanding on what I was just talking about?
Oh, just sort of how I would typically explain, and I feel like I never even really use the terms line and veils for this, but it's sort of like the difference between a hard no, so that there's a line to not cross, and then sort of the idea of like, yeah, you know, maybe this kind of thing is okay at a safe distance, like through frosted glass where I can't see the details, but I can see the overall shape of it. I'm very cautious when you approach there.
Yeah. All right. So I'm actually just seeing that a message in the Twitch chat here. The DM has to have a decent sense of how their players are doing. So DM have to become game barometers while herding cats, players narrating the game. Which I would say, yeah, being a storyteller and being the DM is a lot of responsibility. And some of that will just come from practice and being and trusting your players and each other to communicate with each other on these sort of things. And because like it shouldn't all be on the storyteller to facilitate everything, but it often does fall to them in many ways. And Bunny, you want to say something?
I mean, you sort of said the part I wanted to say at the end there too, is that I think it's really important to remember as a DM or GM or whatever the whole heckity gets called in whatever system you're running, that you're not alone in this. And I think like encouraging and empowering your players to also act as barometers and keep an eye on each other and to try to have a sense of how other people are doing, can, help actually invest them in the story and the other characters too. But also like just making sure you say at some point, hey, also like if you have concerns about this or you want to pause to check in with someone, you can stop me. I think that needs to be something that's clarifying, because it can be really easy as the DM to be going into this like whole massive description, in particular if you're like running a module and you're just reading a paragraph from a book and that paragraph tends to go wildly off the rails and you're like not looking up from the page and your players are all looking like they kind of want to leave. You might not know. So ensuring that your players feel like, yes, you are a part of this. This is teamwork. I really want you to approach if there's stuff that comes up. It can be really important. Otherwise, you may have too much weight on your shoulders and you'll fall over at the end of the table and get, I don't know, kissed by a dog or something, which sounds great. Actually, maybe this is a great result. I'm going to mute myself.
Cal, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just anybody that hasn't role played and is like super intimidated now because it's like, oh geez, I need to do all of these things. You're a person and so are all the players. There can be a very much, I want to show up and I want the DM to do all the work for me when it comes to entertainment. And it shouldn't be like that with like consent too. And a lot of DMs feel like they're unappreciated or they have to carry like the burdens of all these, and anything that bad happens is their fault. But a lot of players feel like, oh, I shouldn't have done this, or oh, I made this person feel uncomfortable or whatever. That the DM deals with that too. Way back to when Amy and Bunny had brought up like, hey, they're a person too, right? So like, hey, help everybody out. Like maybe a player goes, I recall like this other player not being okay with that, because yes, the storyteller, the DM, the GM, they just forgot. So like if you treat it like a group storytelling experience and less like like the DM's like job to regulate everything, you're gonna have a much better time, and there's not gonna be that angst, like burnout angst or feeling like used or forever DM syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if we want to go into what happens in situations where something like okay, so I just remembering something that Bunny had brought up in another panel about how having a consent form established in your session 0 can be a tool to fall back on if for some reason the one of your lines has been crossed. If you would could speak on that a bit more, that would be fantastic, because I thought that was a very important point.
I feel this is also a point that I always struggle to explain. So hopefully I did it well last time, and I'll do my best on this one too. But sort of the core idea is that I think it can be really beneficial to sort of externalize like responsibility or blame when it comes to something that interrupts play or that could make you quote unquote the bad guy or something like that, right? And so that's another angle. We're having like a consent form and sort of like boundaries that you've agreed on beforehand and you've discussed, and you sort of discuss what the vibes and the themes are and all of that sort of thing. Just having that to fall back on can be so beneficial, because then it's not you versus the table, you having to come up and say, hey, I'm uncomfortable in this scene. Instead of going, hey, right at the beginning, we talked about consent forms, and this is one of the things that we agreed wasn't going to happen. So we're going to do the X card here. I know it's hard to keep track of all the consent form stuff, but I just caught it. So I wanted to say, now it doesn't have to all be about you. It's now bringing it back to that moment we agreed on how you were going to try to do things together as a group. And you can also cover for someone else that way. or at least seem like you're doing that instead of me having to be like, hi, also, I mean, please, oh my gosh, stop drawing blood out of someone through a needle in front of me. I can be like, hey, I remember when we were doing consent form stuff, one of the things we talked about was like, medical stuff around characters. I think some of us were uncomfortable with it. I just want to pause here and maybe go back and check in on that. Like having that third thing to point to can be just such a lifesaver.
Yeah. And I think that was, I think that came up in the context of when something comes up and that in fear of, and the intimidation of bringing up a topic and like, oh God, I'm going to disappoint everybody because everyone else is loving the scene. Well, I don't know, maybe someone else isn't also loving the scene too. You don't necessarily know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I see Cal, you've got your hand up
just on that point. I mean, it may not even be intentional that somebody's crossed that boundary, but you've gotten so into that moment, into that scene, you got excited, you kind of forgot yourself, and it's just a way to say, oh hey, just quick reminder, we're not doing that. We agreed that we weren't going to go there, and they might just be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, great. Thank you. I mean, I'm like that. I will get caught up and like, if you remind me, hey, you agreed to this, like, oh my gosh, so sorry, like, and then you can shut it down. And it's not about you're a horrible person for crossing that line. It's like, we get it. Things happen. Stop, move on. You can just change direction.
Yeah, because I think just reminding people that, yeah, sometimes like you may feel really bad because you've done something that has accidentally, inadvertently distressed one of your friends, but don't hold on to that. Learn from it. Find ways to acknowledge that you have done this and do better with it. I don't know if there's a better way to summarize that one.
Communication again, just like maybe it gives you the opportunity to say, hey, can we have a quick moment after game? I'm really sorry that happened, it wasn't intentional, and you can find some way through it.
Yeah, open communication and especially private check-ins too, so it's not putting people on the spot, because that feels terrible for everybody. And
not every discussion has to happen at the table with the rest of your players. You can have like, hey, can we have just a couple of minutes, the two of us to chat about this, and then then it's like, okay, we're in agreement, this has happened, we're moving on, great, no problem.
And don't be afraid to pull out of the scene and say, okay, actually we're going to pull away from it, like just pull out for a sec, check in, and then maybe go back into play. And you can leave the scene and come back to it. It doesn't have to be kept in character all the time. Now, we got a question in chat from ChahiSFX. For those that are regular streamers, how do you deal with consent when it comes to the audience, both informing them of things that are going to come up and having to set boundaries? And I see, Chris, you wanted to speak on that one. Go for it. You are muted.
Because I am old, I forgot to take my mute button off. So I just want to briefly speak about this briefly, because it's been a minute since I was a regular streamer. I started a new job, can't stream regularly. But the thing, I wasn't particularly good at this because I was doing a lot of blind Let's Plays. So I talk about the rating, I usually set the content level for mature, but I wasn't really doing that. And one of the things that really kind of put maybe put the brakes on blind playing games was I played Disco Elysium, which is a highly rated game, really fun, really cool. But some of the stuff it deals with is messed up, and it can be super triggering. There's a bunch of slurs, a bunch of descriptions of suicide, and other things. And I'm like, okay, is this the energy I want to be bringing? Not necessarily, especially I don't want to spring it on people. So it's hard. There can be difficulty maintaining a balance. Mature filter doesn't capture all of that. But if you know what you're doing, or if you know what you're getting into, you can bring it up at the start and be like, hey, trigger warning for these things. Or if you have regular chat members who are comfortable bringing it up with you, you can bring it up, or bring it up with your mods, being put in a request for trigger warnings. I know a couple of horror podcasts that in their show notes will put out a series of trigger warnings. So bugs, blood, open air, blah blah blah. That things that they've had requests for to warn about for triggers. So,
Cal.
Yeah, like it comes back to that, like we're only human. And Kelly of Dork Tales here, on one of the stream elements is like, this game contains mature themes, may include crude language, scenes of violence, horror, etc. Right? And he wrote in there, our lines aren't your lines, so take care of yourself. Viewer discretion is advised. And that, I think it does like come down to that, right? Like you can obviously be like surprised at something that like potentially comes up, but you can try your best, but you can't take responsibility for if you have 100, 200, thousands, or like whatever, like in the chat, right? You can just do your best, right? Like do your best chat warnings, right? Yeah. But when you can go out of, oh, I just noticed, Bunny, thank you. When you can, do content warnings. Like if you do know, right? But like Chris, you were saying, like these things popped up and you were doing like a fresh play, like a blind playthrough. And you knew it was popular and that it was like edgy, but you you couldn't give a content warning for like what was coming up. All you could really do is be like, hey, this game is rated for blah blah because of alcohol, whatever. Yeah. And so just be like considerate to your fellow humans, I think, is the as accommodating as you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kat, you think you want to say something?
Yeah, on a similar note to that, and also kind of referring again to what Just FX was saying, because a bunch of us are individual streamers along with Dork Tales, something that we do have to deal with every now and then, that I know personally for me, I've had a lot of difficulty with in my last streams, which is one of the reasons why I'm not really streaming much anymore, is consent regarding how the audience is treating the people who are streaming. Like specifically in my case, my last few streams, I had a lot of trauma dumping from the audience that I don't know how to deal with that. I'm not trained in how to deal with that. And I'm there trying to have a nice stream and build Lego, not try to help somebody through certain things that are out of my wheelhouse. So frankly, I don't really know how to talk about that, but it could, that is something that as streamers we also have to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking that actually reminds me of we are like it's a little less, I don't want to say it's less personal because it is still personal, because at least on Dork Tales, we are a team, we are collective, we have the storyteller, and then we have all the players. And there's certain things that we are not comfortable having said to us in chat. We don't want to see that because we watch our chats. Like we watch the Twitch chat. Many of us check the YouTube comments, and some of that is just, please do not do it. And please respect that we are human beings. And yeah.
Toxic
YouTube's
AF.
the worst.
Oh God.
Yeah. Chris, yes, what's up?
Yeah, one thing I will like just request is like check in with people and like don't be horny at streamers like to them unless they've been explicitly clear that they are inviting that. It's uncomfortable, and like if you know them, if you're like, even if you're friends, that can be a weird boundary to cross because it publicizes, it exposes you to that energy from people that don't necessarily know you. It's not necessarily my issue as much, but I've seen someone, another streamer, in our like associated community who has been doing stuff at the gym lately, and people have been like really grossly thirsting after them on every picture, and he's like, yo, I don't want this. I just want to I want to exist in public without people being extremely horny, and people are terrible at it. So audience, Twitch chat, YouTube if it goes up there later. Consent is necessary before you're horny to people.
Yeah, like I don't know if you can just be like I don't even. How do I see? My brain's like is it even okay to ask am I allowed to be horny here or something? I don't know. It's like
prefer that. Please do
I
that
would prefer
instead.
that. Like Ellie, like ask if you have to.
A simple
Rather
question.
than just spring it on you, like
And like if
Ooh.
someone's like thanks for asking, but no, then just respect that and move on, I guess. Oh my god. Yeah, Kel.
I think that comes down to the phenomenon of consent and the internet in general, in that 100% of people do not act how they would act in person the way they act on the internet. I thought about that. No, it's 100%. And it's so weird that like that people enjoy that. Like people go in and like fight with people, and it's just sometimes people, sometimes acquaintances, like, whoa, who are you? Like what? And yeah, oh, this is my best friend coming into the chat or talking and making like this joke or whatever. The 69 other people, nice, in the chat don't know that that's somebody that's known me since I was 15. Right? And so now it's just weird. Like, what is it? Like don't be weird. Don't be creepy. Like this, I like some people, and it's so weird because you can jump from like Twitch chat to Twitch chat, and like this person clearly wants like compliments, or this person is about like, let's talk and let's like share like what's happened to us or whatever, and this person's just playing D&D, and somebody comes in and writes like 3 paragraphs about like what they'll do to their like sexy like rogue, and it's like, bro, I'm just trying to steal some like coins from a noble. Like, what are you doing in the chat? Get out of here. And it's maybe you can't avoid that. You're throwing yourself out there and you can't stop people from.
I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of people see other people, especially in online places, in an objectified way, where they're not really truly seeing the people that they're interacting with as a person. And I think that's, of course, very much the case when you're virtual. But even if you're not virtual, you're like a flesh tuber. But I'm going to use that term forever. I'm sorry, y'all. Even if you're a flesh tuber with a camera where they can see your actual face, like I still think that piece of distance is something that some people sort of struggle to see through. And of course, some people are objectifying each other anyways. And so that being combined, I think makes it really, really easy for some people to kind of forget that you're a human being, and to interact with you in a way that they might very differently in person. When they can see, like, maybe they'll be like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm having empathetic emotional responses. Holy cripes, it's a human. But they might not have that online for a whole variety of reasons, because they're weird creeps primarily. But I think it's easier to be a weird creep online than IRL.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, like, kind of adjacent to that too, is that while we play, like, especially in our tabletop, like our stream games, we are playing characters who are not how we ourselves would necessarily react to things. And you do not, okay, I'm going to put this out here. You don't know me. You're not my friend. I'm sorry. You're not. We are not close. I might be like, I'm in the Discord. I love talking to people. I love connecting, but we don't know each other. And I like being able to talk about the games and be excited with everybody. But if I'm flirting like playfully with my friends, that's not something I accept from someone who is not a friend of mine. And that is a different relationship than what I have with anybody else. And I'm not even accepting that from all of my friends, because each relationship is different. And I think people forget that. So, and that's also with like insults and It's just how I allow people to talk to me. I will allow one of my best friends to tell me to shut the fuck up and go over there and like get out. If anybody said that who was not that person or my very close friend, no, I like, if you're on my stream and you come in with that kind of energy, I'm blocking you. I'm banning you. Like, you are not coming back. It's not okay. So I think that's something that, especially in terms of like relationships and dynamics between streamers and viewers, is something that like they don't owe you that. Oh.
Yeah, well said. Like you described the best friend syndrome. You listen to a podcast for 5 years and they have no idea who you are, but like you're their best friend. And like when you show up at a con or to sign something or whatever, they get thrown off or like angry or defensive when you don't want to hang out with them because they've established that almost like one-sided relationship.
Yeah.
And so you can like their characters, right? You can like a performer and that kind of thing, but please know that like, you know, like it's like an actor or like whatever, and it's a tale as old as time, but it's way different in the streaming world where things are a little bit more personal now. It's not like watching Tom Cruise and like sending him love letters and getting angry when Stan sends his 50th one, right? Because you can interact. We see the dank memes on the Discord. We react to like the chat, so it's a little bit more personal. But like, yeah, you don't know us in real life. Yeah. And Amy, you said it like really well. Like every single person's relationship with each other individual person is different, and you shouldn't try to compare friendships or who's best friends and who's like whatever, and you'll just hurt yourself.
Absolutely.
It's a good topic to have brought up because it is specifically love, sex, and consent in tabletop role-playing games, but many are online and streamed.
Yeah, especially since like we are doing performances and also I want to bring this up real quick. So even if characters in a game, there's not a specific thing I'm thinking of, but so it's just a general thought. Even if there are characters that seem to have chemistry in a game, it is up to those players whether or not anything actually happens between those characters. Even if like that is their story to tell, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, at least in terms of audience viewership and even the other players. Like as long as everyone's consenting that a relationship is happening here, like I think I'm thinking more along the lines of people being upset that two characters don't get together. Like, I ship these two together. Why are they not getting together? That's what fan fiction's for. Or you're keeping in your head. And oh my God, do not write a real person fic. Please do. Oh my God, do not do that. Please, for the love of everything, do not do that. If you write about about characters, at least for me, go for it. I might not want to read it, but that's your do that.
Yeah. Don't share it if you don't have consent to do so.
Yeah. And like that's a very individual thing too. Like Dork Tales in the Twitch chat saying like, I don't care, you can write about me. It's like, okay.
All right, BRB. I'm gonna submit my 7,000 page Mr. Dork Tales /
manifesto.
I'm really excited to have this be all right.
Oh, and that very critical addendum that he just added, except don't mix me with anyone who doesn't also consent to it, which is very, very important. Yes, I appreciate that. I guess because we're kind of getting close to the end of our time here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really should be brought up that I've missed that hasn't just come up naturally or been brought up. And I mean, aside from the like, no, actually, I don't even have an aside from. I'm just trying to think. Oh, actually, yeah. Any suggestions on how to, if you want to have a character be in a relationship in your games, how do you even approach that? How do we make this a positive experience for people and make it so that everyone comes out feeling good about it? Have any ideas for that? How do we do it?
Various hand noises. I think I saw Chris's hands too. But I think you talk to the player first.
Yep. Okay.
100%.
And maybe the DM, maybe the cast, etc. You talk to them first, and you're like, hey, because usually this stuff happens, like what Starbone was saying early on, and where it's like writing a book, right? Your character does something that you perhaps didn't anticipate, and you're like, I seem to be feeling like my character is a little bit flirty right now, and I think your character might be a little bit flirty right now too. That is the moment to check in.
Yeah, Chris, what do you want to say?
If you haven't already done so.
I would just also like check in with the character. Or if you want your character to be in a relationship to make them unavailable, you can make it like, oh, they're in a relationship with this NPC, and this NPC is booked and busy and unavailable. My character has a girlfriend in Canada. They're very far away and very hard to find.
Or they just enjoy being single, man.
Yeah, my character's confirmed bachelor for some reason.
Very brief. Very briefly, it's weird. So regardless of people's orientation and exploring and all of that stuff, like all my characters are kind of ace, just because like I want to have adventures and I want to explore the friendships, and like everything else to me is like okay, and like I might cringe when it's like out that, but like in Cyberpunk game, I want to be a cyberpunk. Right? Like I'll play my magical girl sim, right? For like the relationship stuff or whatever. And it's like, whoa, how do you guys have so much energy for like emotional drama in your tabletop role-playing games? Like give me like half of that energy and I won't need coffee anymore.
Yeah, I was just thinking like I am like because I've had several of my characters have had relationships, and it's something that I kind of have to, it doesn't really come naturally to most of when I'm developing them, because it's not usually how I think, at least in terms of like romantic relationships. Like I'm pretty sure in our Shards of Nern game that my character in that has hooked up with more people than the rest of the cast. And based on how they present themselves, I don't think that is the most, like, I don't think people would necessarily think that, but they're
brag much.
But I also don't think that they care about that so much.
As a viewer of Nern, I don't care. It's just like, oh, Tia's having another adventure. Like,
yeah,
great.
None of them are serious. She's just living her best life, moving on, and that's who she is. It's great. But I'm just thinking, like, I don't know. It's not. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
On a similar note to that, like a character like Tia, she likes to have fun and stuff. And like my previous Nern character, Zeno, he also liked to have fun, but he's not around anymore. And now who Zeno used to be and what Zeno used to like, Asen doesn't know if she likes that or what she wants. And so that's again how this kind of thing can evolve, because what does Asen even like anymore? She hasn't had any experiences as who she is now, and so she doesn't know. So she doesn't know what she wants to consent to or not until it happens, because she has no experience.
And that comes across as ace or just uncaring. That's fine. They don't have to. That doesn't have to be the theme of any game.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it doesn't have to be a focal point. If it comes up, neat. It does. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't. Right.
And that's okay. Yeah.
I guess it also makes me think about my character in our Victorian Age mage game, because my character is from the dual tradition Cult of Ecstasy Celestial Chorus. it's a doozy. She's her nighttime job is that she is a dominatrix. That's what she do in like Victorian era. And that is something that we have to talk a lot about with her in mind when I've had a lot of conversations with Kelly about what exactly, like, what does that mean? And I felt very uncomfortable at first when I was first thinking about this, trying to figure out how she would be perceived. And so far the audience has been fantastic. My fears have been unfounded. I was terrified that she would be taken and very much objectified and over-sexualized, because that is not the point. It's like, this is part of her character, but that is not the point. But yeah, I don't know if any of you have had that experience, just thinking about like being aware that that could be something that could come up, and even if it
yeah. That's interesting, because like a person is not like their job, or a person is not their relationship, a person is not their kinks, a person is not their sexuality or their romanticism, right, too. And sometimes like that's fine that it's part of their like identity, because it's often freeing, or it's something that they've needed to address or fight for. Right, like those are themes that are fine to go into, but like I think just like if you treat people like people, and like your friends like your friends, you end up with like wholesome moments. And I don't know, for me, the wholesome moments are like telling somebody that like, you have my sword and my bow and my axe. To me, that's like, oh, best friends forever. Like I'm here for it. Like that's the best like relationship like ever. And everything else is kind of like the cherry on top, right? Like if they want to go for it like that, that's fine. But like the unbreakable bonds are what
I love that.
I'm in there for.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like, because like Chastity's got like this really close relationship with one of our NPCs, Teddy. And I think that a lot of people have certain ideas about what the nature of that relationship is, and I've never gone into what it actually is. So that's kind of been very much just, that's a fade to black on the entire situation. Like they have spent nights in each other's room. Honestly, I don't think anything happened. I think they just like hung out.
I like that too. Yeah. Like why do they need to know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
well, that's how I felt about Wreck and Mool and Spelljammer. I loved the two of them together. They were just so much fun. Mool, I got an idea. And the whole idea of talking about fanfic, you guys, two characters writing fanfic together, and it's just like, oh, I got ideas, and like, oh, I got an idea for this one. It's just like it was like my favorite little platonic romance. It was just, get your bucket. I got your, get in the bucket. We got to go do this. It's like I had these whole adventures thought out that they would go on together, and it was just lovely.
Yeah, we had a couple chats about that, just like all the side thing, like, what if you do these things?
Cute.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're talking about like relationships and love and sex and that kind of thing can be private even in like a public game, and I like that actually. Yeah. It's nobody else's like business of what it is. Like maybe you're just hanging out in the room because that person feels comfortable. I like that. Yeah.
And also just like even if the relationship is like, I don't know, just be alluded to, and I like that. And
me too.
Yeah.
Implied. Yeah.
It's good. Any last kind of words, because we have to do our outros here pretty quick.
For a panel on sex and sexuality, we were all very well behaved. Like truly, I'm shocked.
Absolutely, yeah.
My tongue has some confusing grooves in it, like I was biting it a whole lot. But
I really should like take you up on learning how to VTube, Bun, because like my poker face.
Let's do it. Oh my goodness. Let's do it. Let's do it.
A panel to how to VTube next year, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
We have a few
I can't wait.
VTubers at least.
I'm here.
Would love to see that.
I heard that we were supposed to be well behaved at this point. Does this mean I shouldn't like just come in here and talk and be like, "Hey y'all,
No,
let's whip
do
it
it.
out"? All right, cool.
Butts. Butts.
Whip out your butts.
Boy.
Whip out those candied hams.
No, it's gay ass Toreador shit.
And this
That's
is when
the
we get our
theme.
TOS violation
Oh!
right now.
Yeah.
The last like
Whamp,
I
whamp,
really do
whamp,
want to-
whamp, 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 whamp.
Wait, I have one last thing to say before we do outros. One last thing. Okay. So, I wanted to say that, so again, in our mage game, I don't know if it counts as spoilers or not. One of my character is at least having a flirtatious situation with two separate characters, and it's like I'm just like, yeah, okay, they're all down for this, and it's great, and I was there for it, and the chat was having a great time, and I just think that, hey, people need to talk about the fact that, hey, maybe relationships are not monogamous too, also as a thing. It can happen.
Oh damn it! We didn't talk about polyamory and all that
We did not
stuff.
talk about polyamory, and I'm kicking myself.
Didn't.
Damn it!
Next year.
I'm so sorry.
The polyarmory, a new panel.
Yeah, arm yourselves.
All the armor.
But I just want to remind that, like, yeah, okay, so maybe those relationships may also exist as long as everyone is on board for it.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
we could do
Again,
final
it's-
thoughts as part of our outros too.
Yeah,
Do we
sure.
have, like a last thing we wanna sum up. I don't know, because I know we're
Sure.
pretty limited on time right now, aren't we?
I think so, yeah.
You
So
guys
how
got
about
5
we-
minutes.
All right, that should be enough time. Then let's loop around, starting with you, Millie.
Oh my goodness, bananas. Okay, hi. My name is Millie and/or Bunnyhearted. I'm a comfort VTuber over at twitch.tv/Bunnyhearted with a bit of a chaotic streak. This has been really, really lovely. My pronouns are she and her or they and them. I feel like the one cool summary thing that I want to say is that romance is great. Love is great. Sex is great. It can be a ton of fun to do this stuff in your games if it's something you're interested in going about. Like, do it with care and intention, but absolutely, like, let's go tennis style here. Let's have thirsty sword lesbians. Let's do these things in our storytelling, because it can be a ton of fun to explore. Of course, with care and intention. And also, I guess you can find me at twitch.tv/bunnyhearted, bunnyhearted.com, and here all the time because this place is amazing. And you should do !tip and give them money so that they can do more art of my characters.
Show us the tip.
All right, let's go
Show
down.
us the tip.
This is the
to
panel I can say that during.
Cat.
All right, thanks for being here, everybody. Again, my name is Captain Starbun, and I can be found here at twitch.tv/Captain Starbun, where I am a bunny VTuber that mostly does fun sci-fi things or Lego, where you actually get to see my hands for real. Oh my gosh, what a scandal. Wrists.
I would have never have guessed.
Oh my gosh, so scandalous. I don't really have too many thoughts for closing. We kind of summed up everything I was gonna say anyways. So on to the next.
All right, Chris, our lovely friend who I don't see enough of you. I miss you.
Another one. So thank you so much for having me on today. It's been a real treat. I've missed you all so much. It's real great to be back in the space and be streaming again. It's been a hot minute. If you'd like to find me, you can find me on twitch.tv/BoulderNA. You can find me on Twitter if you look carefully. And
Look carefully if you're watching Twitter.
Look at my pinned post where it will tell you about my account. And also learn whose land you're on. Do a little research. Canada and America is founded on stolen land. So look into it. Learn whose land it is. And make reparations. Figure it out.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Okay, Kel.
Oh, hi. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. This has been such a great topic to weigh in on and discuss with my co-panelists. It's been great. I'm Kel here in the chat. She, her pronouns. I am a criminologist by education. I play games. I knit, do all sorts of weird stuff. And my last thought is communication. I will always circle back to that. Communication is the key, and it can find your way through any difficult situation. So please be open, talk with your players, talk with your friends.
Absolutely. and Cal.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the panel, Mr. Dork Tales. Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, it was, wow, we covered like a lot of topics, threw in all of our like 2 cents, and I was like, whoa, wow, the least amount of jokes, crude, lewd jokes out of like any panel. Who would have thought? Yeah, I'm NeoCal on Twitch. Twitter is a thing, I guess. You'll be underwhelmed by my Twitter. I'm on Dork Tales, Dragonlance on Wednesday evenings, and I've been doing like a podcast thingy for like 2.5 years about Transformers, reboot, 90s cartoons, if that's your sort of thing. The one I really like is Too Much Energon. And yeah, it's mostly a Beast Wars podcast. And when we started that, we were just going to cover the 90s Beast Wars show. But then, oh, wait, there's comics. There's Japanese Beast Wars. And wouldn't you know it, there's a Beast Wars live action movie coming out that I have to watch. I mean, that I'm excited
It's the law
to watch. It's the law. I do a Beast Wars podcast. So if animals that are vehicles, but also aliens are your thing, yeah, come check that out. And oh yeah, 2 cents on like the panel. Yeah, we covered everything. Just like everyone's your friend that you're playing with. Let's go from there.
Yeah. Right. Perfect. Yeah, no, it's been great. I have been Amy, at least for the time being. I will continue to be Amy, and I am Paradoxical Ghoul on Twitch and on the Discord. And might have been a surprise that I was moderating the panel, but a pleasant surprise, and I'm really happy that I got the opportunity. So thank you for that, and for trusting me to lead this conversation as much as I was able to. So this has been great, and I appreciate all of you for being here and talking about this with me. So I think that's it from me. What did I forget?
You forgot absolutely nothing. I just wanted to say thank you all for being on this panel. It was wonderful to sit back and watch y'all take it away and just do a fantastic job. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about, and it's wonderful to be able to just trust you all and watch you all hit the points that I wanted to see hit on your own. I'm just like, it's fine. I don't even need to be here. I can go take a nap. You know, I didn't. I was working with a secret project with Jen that will be revealed during our closing ceremonies tonight. So you definitely want to tune into that. Thank you all for being here. We're going to be back in about 10, 12 minutes, something like that, with bringing NPCs to life, like maybe Frankenstein style, who knows. But in meanwhile, as everyone had said, be consensual, communicate, and as always, butts. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
That's right. Bye.
Butts, goodbye.
Butts.
But